Welcome to the attendees online. The meeting hasn't yet started. Hi, Bob. We've got two Bob Ashfords. Is it Bob Ashford as you or Robert Ashford, please? Hi, Bob. I can see you've unmuted. Can you speak?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Fine, thanks.
Fiona, Lisa. I can't work out the echo. Yes.
Okay, good evening everybody, and thank you all for joining us tonight. This is a meeting of Frome Town Council. I'm Andy Jones and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. Just to remind everybody, we do have people online as well as here in the room. So for those of you in the room, please wait until you've got a microphone before you speak so that people online can hear you. And also do please start by saying who you are so that we've got that for the record. The emergency exit is at the rear corner of the room. The assembly point is at the far side of the car park. Toilets at the end of the corridor on the right, and there's an accessible toilet to the right of the lift. That's the end of my air hostess bit. I think you've all been helping yourselves to tea and coffees as you came in. There is more on the side there if you want any. Tonight, Paul Will Clark. We've got Laura, Sarah, Becca and Rachel managing the minutes, questions board and all the IT stuff generally. The meeting is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. For those councillors who are attending via Zoom, please use the yellow hand, and anybody else with questions on Zoom, please ask them through the Q&A board. As you can see, we have got quite a number of people in the room tonight, more than we normally see for a Frome Town Council meeting. And I guess the majority of you are here for item 3, which is the Weymouth Road parking discussion. Before that, we do have a slot for general questions and comments. So can I ask those of you who want to talk about Weymouth Road, please to hold back until we get to agenda item 3. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. So Paul, have we received any?
Apologies from Anne Hills, Anita Collier, Philip Campagna and Max Wide.
Thank you very much. Can I ask one of my colleagues to propose that we accept those? That was Fiona, and all those in favour? Oh, we need a seconder. I think I saw Sarah. And all those in favour, please wave your orange cards in the air so Paul can count us all in.
That's unanimous?
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. Declaration of councillors' interest. Do any of the councillors have interest specific to tonight's items they need to declare? No, we're all clear on that. Thank you. And then the approval of the minutes of the last meeting from the 4th of September. I've got those in front of me. I don't think anybody's raising any questions about them, so can I have somebody to propose we accept them? I've got Nick, seconded by Lisa. All those in favour? Unanimous again.
Yep. Could the people, the councillors at the back, when they vote, you just go really high? Thank you. That's unanimous.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. So item 2 on the agenda is questions and comments from public and councillors. Just to start this, Matt, would you like to just say hello to the group and introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Matt Mellon. I'm starting as the new Climate Action Lead. Delighted to be here and really looking forward to working with everyone. Hope to meet you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Right, do we have any general questions? Gentleman on the corner there.
Good evening. My name is Alan Whittemore. I live on Oakfield Road, opposite the Oakfield Academy, and my grandchildren attend Avanti Park School on Park Road. So my questions tonight and observations are regarding the safer school streets for Frome. And I know this might be an FYI request, but can I ask if the appropriate regulations have been made to make the scheme legally enforceable? Could I also ask what enforcement of the restriction times for this scheme has taken place on the restricted areas, and what has the scheme cost? I know from an article on Monday in the Daily Telegraph that the cost of the coloured triangles for 2 schools alone was £146,000, but I'm not sure of the cost of the total scheme in the town. Now, I live on Oakfield Road, opposite the Oakfield Academy, as I said, and I have seen widespread ignoring of the restriction times on Oakfield Road, such that I feel the scheme has fallen into disrepute. On the occasions I've been outside the Avanti Park School collecting grandchildren, I've seen vehicles turn up to collect pupils during the restricted times. I've seen many vehicles turn up on Oakfield Road and the old nursery's access egress road and park sometimes 15 to 30 minutes before the restriction time of 2:45, and I believe that's because they think that they will beat the restrictions, but of course when they leave just after 3 p.m. they will still be in the restricted zone, thereby offending as they leave the restriction zone. Some often sit in the car with the engines idling, which I've observed at least 2 to doing that today. And this afternoon I counted 19 cars collecting children from the afternoon. And I haven't quite finished yet.
Okay.
And I've also seen cars turn up in the morning and in the restricted time, and they often park on the yellow restriction lines by the school exit. Now, I've spoken to Katie Fraser in the past, who's told me she's been in contact with NSL, whom I understand are contracted by Somerset Council Parking Services to enforce this parking restriction. And they told her that they are unable to enforce the Safer School Streets restrictions. Now, I understand from Barry Lee of Parking Services with the Somerset Council, after I'd contacted them, he gave instructions to NSL to enforce the scheme. But that he only knew about the scheme from reading about it in a newspaper. I've also been in contact with Martin Dimmery, the Somerset councillor for Oakfield Road area, and this was at the time of the election. He was very busy. But he also contacted Steve Deacon, the service manager for Somerset Council Parking Services, who confirmed to Martin that NSL are now briefed to visit and take the actions they can. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but the actions that they can. As I've observed today, people are just totally ignoring it.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask Peter Wheelhouse, who's been closely involved in the scheme, to respond on that?
Firstly, thank you very much indeed for raising these issues with us. We always welcome feedback about the scheme. And there are quite a few questions in there, and I'll endeavour to answer as many of them as I can tonight. The first one that you raised was about whether the scheme is enforceable. It certainly is. It's an emergency traffic regulation order that enables those restrictions to be put in place. The important thing for me to say is that those restrictions can only be formally enforced by the police. And we have had regular contact with the police around ensuring that this is enforced. In fact, we met with them this week. We met with the police team this week to impress upon them the importance of getting this scheme enforced. What I can say is that they're in support of our initiative. They have said this week that they will endeavour to be present across the School Street zone as part of their patrols, as much as their capacity allows. But I need to make you aware that at the moment they are very stretched, because obviously police resources generally are very stretched. Just one other point around enforcement to make is that when it comes to the parking restrictions in these streets and around the School Street zone, NSL are able to enforce those restrictions, and this week they have a presence on site, not as often as we would like, but they have confirmed that they will be on site this week and in subsequent weeks to enforce on those parking restrictions, and they have a very clear brief to do so. So we hope that they will fulfil their responsibilities in that regard. You asked about the cost. There was a spurious claim made in the national press this week that the cost of those markings outside the school, which are there very much as a safety measure to warn drivers of the presence of a school street zone, and that is a national feature of these schemes. This isn't something that we have done specifically in Frome to address the issues in Frome. This happens across the country with these school street schemes. That claim of £140,000 to install those markings is spurious. The sum that was in the contract with our contractor was closer to 62,000 for that particular element of the scheme. So just to put the record straight on that. We are monitoring closely the impact of these restrictions. We have been collecting data quite intensively since the School Street zone was introduced. our data suggests that although there's still a lot of people who are not complying, that actually the level of traffic using these streets has reduced since the introduction of the scheme. We'll be following up our own monitoring with some detailed evaluation this month by Sustrans. They undertook some baseline surveys back in 2022 when this scheme was first envisaged and we first started engaging with the community on it. And they will be following up with a further evaluation to check on how well the scheme is going this month. And our plan is to bring a report to Council in December when we have the full data at our disposal, where we'll be able to let everyone know how things are going. I should also add that very shortly we'll be doing a perception survey with local residents and anyone using these school streets, and we would encourage as many people in the community as possible to take part in that perception survey. I think I've covered all of the questions, but if I've missed anything, please let me know. But I think it's fair to say that we will keep both councillors and the wider community informed of the progress of this scheme. You know, as I said earlier, there will be a specific report on this at Council in December.
Peter, I think, is it worth just clarifying that all of that funding has come externally through Sustrans?
Yes, I mean, all of the funding for this scheme has not come from the council precept. It has actually come from Active Travel England and was applied for by Sustrans. And I think that that's a really important point to make, particularly in response to some of the national media reports about the town council's expenditure on this.
Fiona, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, could I just ask one other question? When you say the wardens are out, what are they actually doing? Are they advising? Are they giving warnings? Are they giving parking tickets? Because without enforcement...
They have instructions to hand out tickets, and they will do so where they see offences being committed. We've had that assurance from NSL today. So you can fully expect to see wardens on the street over the coming weeks and handing out tickets where it's required.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to what Peter was saying, and just to make it clear that that's also money that couldn't have been spent on any other schemes in Frome, or it couldn't have been spent on any other highway improvements, for example. It was specifically for that scheme, and it's a pot of money for active travel schemes like the school street. So I have seen on Facebook, etc., that, oh, you could have done something with the A361. Not with that money, we couldn't have. And then also just to reassure you as well that it is a trial. It was always billed as a trial. It's an 18-month trial, and we're getting the first lot of evaluation, as Peter said, in December. And if we need to make tweaks or changes or sort of look at things, then we will. We're very open to that. It's all about trying it and seeing how it goes, and then iterating if we need to. And it is, yeah, it's definitely a trial.
But if I can just say, please keep the reports coming in. It's really important that we receive feedback from the community about what's actually happening on the ground. You know, we will be monitoring it through our various channels, but we are also very dependent on hearing from people locally.
And do please put the date of our December council meeting in your diary. You'd be very welcome to come along and listen to what we've got.
I just want to say a big thank you to Alan, who's one of the residents monitoring this for us and is very conscientious and has gathered a lot of data. Thank you for coming tonight, Alan.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the public? Gentleman behind there. No, we're not doing item 3 just yet. Thank you. Anything else for item 2? General questions from councillors? Tracy, do you want? I think we can hold fire on that one. Yeah. Okay. I don't see anybody else urgently wanting to ask any questions, in which case I think we can move on to item 3. Now, we do appreciate that a number of you would like to speak on this, so to ensure we have as many people as possible able to have their say without the time running away from us, we will be asking, after the short summary of the presentation, we'll be asking to hear first from anybody who is in support of the current permit scheme. And we've allowed 15 minutes for those speakers to have their say. Then we'll hear from anybody that's in favour of removing parking restrictions. Again, 15-minute timeline on that, please. And then finally, I'll come to the councillors for them to ask any clarifying questions, to discuss the proposal, and then vote on the recommendation. So I hope that's understood and a fair use of our time. Thank you. So over to Jane to summarise where we are.
Thank you, Andy. So I'm not going to go through the report in any details. I'm sure you're all familiar with the background to the scheme, how it operates, and the review that was carried out. So the plan on the screen shows the current parking layout. And following confirmation from Somerset Council that the scheme is made permanent, the Neighbourhood Parking Group spoke at the July Council meeting, giving councillors a presentation of their concerns over the permit scheme, and that the process that had been carried out was statistically flawed. As a result of that, Paul Wynne, Town Clerk, was asked to write to Somerset Council asking them to review the decision to make the permit scheme permanent. You have the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So the response that was received from Councillor Richard Wilkins, who's the lead member for Transport and Digital at Somerset Council, which is in full on the screen there, was in short that Somerset Council have requested that Frome Town Council lead on a way forward, which could include revoking all of the parking restrictions on Weymouth Road. So regardless of the robustness of the various consultations, we're not here this evening to go back over the statistics. We've tried to put an objective analysis of the consultation responses together, looking at whether the benefits of the permit scheme outweigh the harms. Could we have the next slide, please, Laura? The list of benefits and harms are here on the screen, and I'm sure some of you will disagree with what is on the list, or that there are some issues that have been missed. So we are here this evening to discuss the benefits and harms. This will help inform councillors in making their decision. Could we have the next slide, please, Laura? Thank you. So this is a recommendation, which is that Frome Town Council requests that Somerset Council retain the parking areas and yellow lines and white line arrangements on Weymouth Road and remove the residence permit scheme and the parking meters. And now I think it's probably over to hear from all of you.
Thank you very much, Jim. So can I hear first from anybody who is in support of retaining the parking? Gentleman behind Rachel. And if you'll state your name for the record first, please.
My name is Kevin O'Shea. I'm a resident of Weymouth Road, have been for the last 28 years. And in the interest of transparency, I will declare that I'm the resident responsible for initiating the petition to Somerset County Council in 2018. It's from this start point that I have to take issue with some of the statements and assertions made in the report for this agenda item. Firstly, the original petition to Somerset County Council was not, and I quote, in part around concerns over road safety. It was actually wholly around road safety. However, it was the density of parking of vehicles as a result of the unrestricted parking that was identified as a significant contributory factor in encouraging dangerous driving behaviours in motorists using Weymouth Road. Secondly, the petition was not, and I quote again, calling for the introduction of a residence permit parking scheme. The residents' parking scheme was the only solution subsequently presented by Somerset County Council, but nevertheless supported by the majority of residents. That said, it is my view, and I believe also that of the majority of Weymouth Road residents, that the measures put in place have successfully brought about the desired improvement to safety. Obviously, I sympathise with residents of adjacent streets now experiencing the predicted displacement effect of, and I quote again, additional parked cars, higher levels of congestion, and concerns about pedestrian safety. This is exactly what pre-existed in Weymouth Road and prompted the original petition. The proposal, which I have to say panders to the self-interest of pressure groups and lobbyists outside of Weymouth Road, to have Somerset Council remove the parking restrictions from Weymouth Road will not solve the problem. It may well mean that, as stated, the impact of displacement would be removed, but it will simply return the status of Weymouth Road to that of a free long-term car park with all of its previous hazards. It will not significantly benefit the wider community, such as users of the park, the bowls club or local shops, who will still find a lack of short-term parking spaces available to them in the road. Given that the recommendation of its own report and the scope of this agenda item is to approve rather than consider or consult upon the proposal, Frome Town Council seems determined to unilaterally request the cancellation of the Weymouth Road parking scheme. I would disagree with Somerset Council's assertion that this issue has very little implication from a traffic management perspective. In fact, it's all about traffic management and its impact on road safety. This just feels like an abdication of responsibility on the part of Somerset Council. Removing the existing parking restrictions without putting alternative measures in place to restrict long-term abandonment of vehicles in Weymouth Road and prevent reoccurrence in adjacent streets would be equally irresponsible. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There are potential compromise solutions. If Frome Town Council genuinely wants to find a solution to the increasing overparking, congestion and risk to motorists and pedestrians on the streets of Frome, then it's time to undertake a larger piece of work and make some difficult decisions. Revoking parking restrictions on Weymouth Road and considering it a job done is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Are there any other voices to be heard in support? Gentleman over there.
So my name is Stan Reed. I also live on Weymouth Road. And Kevin, I endorse everything that you've just said. My wife and I, we've lived in Weymouth Road for almost 5 years, so we are newbies. We moved here from Salisbury. Living here, the problems, the issues that we face are no different to any other town or city across the UK. But how we deal with it is...
Sorry, Sam, can I ask you to keep the microphone closer?
Oh, sorry.
So that people online can hear.
Okay, but how we deal with it is local to us. I have sent through a counter proposal earlier this week to yourself, Laura, and I won't go over everything you've said, Kevin, either, because I endorse that. What I don't like about the present scheme, and I must point out that I do have off-road parking, okay? So what I don't like about the present scheme is that it has moved the problem elsewhere and has also displaced other locals who then have got further to walk to their homes. Sorry, I'm moving the mic. So I'll try and keep it brief. So road safety should be paramount first and foremost. Speeding vehicles, cars and vans, every morning and evening I see them speeding up and down Weymouth Road. What I do see as a benefit from the current scheme is that those who are speeding can now see pedestrians walking around. So in that sense, from a road safety perspective, I believe it's safer. Removing that, I think, would be a backward step. In terms of a counter proposal, I believe, and I've not consulted Kevin, so my apologies, but I believe that resident permits should be made available to all those who live in adjacent roads. So with the roads covered by the boundary area on the map that I think you shared earlier, where each household, not just those on Weymouth Road, but Christchurch Street and Catherine Street, etc., should all receive one free sort of parking permit. Okay, unless if you already have off-road parking or perhaps the use of a garage behind your property, then you should not have a free initial permit. For those households who then wish to purchase or wish to have a permit, they can then apply for maybe one permit per household at a rate of, say, £100. Equally, for local businesses, such as in the Bagbox area, for those businesses, again, paying their business rates, I believe that each business should be entitled to one permit per business. Where they've got staff who are working there, coming into Frome from elsewhere, then I believe that they should perhaps be, or they should receive some form of discounted permit, and therefore for the Bowls Club and other local clubs, they could perhaps use the visitor vouchers, for example. Equally, all residents could still apply for visitor sort of parking vouchers as well, which I believe has worked really well. I believe the benefits of this proposal is that it does not impose additional costs on local residents who do not have the luxury of off-road parking and or the use of garages. Equally, by having one permit free for each of those households, it's not causing them additional cost. It does not disadvantage local sports clubs because they can just use the voucher scheme. And what it does do is it helps everyone living locally, okay, while also encouraging the use of the pay and display car parks for those who commute in or for visitors coming into Frome. I could say more, but I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, Sam, your email was circulated to all councillors earlier today, so we have had a chance to read through that. Thank you. Any other voices? There's two over this side, so if I take the gentleman on the front and then the lady behind him.
My name's Michael Stevens. I also am a resident of Weymouth Road, and I'm also going to be speaking in favour of retaining the scheme.
Thanks. I would just remind you, we've only got about 5 minutes left. If you can share that between the two of you, I'd appreciate it.
6 by my reckoning. I did time it. First, can we get away from this idea of Weymouth Road parking scheme? This scheme was consulted on over 9 streets. 7 of those said no thanks. 2 actually said yes. Somerset Road also said yes. And then when the scheme was brought in, if you go and look at the signage that is up the whole street, it says Frome Area 1 residence parking scheme. That means that lots of other streets could be involved in that. That's my first point I'd like to make. Second point I'd like to make is that at every stage in the consultation originally, when pushing 450 houses were consulted, 7 of those 9 streets, there wasn't a corporate response. Those streets did not have a level of interest, not for or against, a level of interest full stop in this scheme. At the review stage, I understand from the stats that were produced in the report that 21% response from all the streets outside the Weymouth Road area was what you got. Now that's 21%. Some might have been for, some might have been against, I don't know. But 21% of the people you consulted about the review of this scheme actually responded outside of Weymouth Road. And my point there is that all along the line, there has not been a huge groundswell of opposition to this parking scheme. What there has been is there has been a small, very well organised and very loud opposition to this scheme. And the stats back that up. Like I said, if there were more people who were seriously against this scheme out there in the wider world of Frome, they'd have filled in those forms. 21% of the houses actually bothered to fill in the forms. The level of concern is not what councillors are hearing from the loud minority who are bending their ears on a systematic basis. That's the first point I'd make. Second big point I'd make is that if you remove this scheme, the parking situation in Weymouth Road will be worse than it ever was before, because part of the scheme has brought in massively increased double yellow lines. I've just paced 50 paces of extra double yellow lines on one side of the bottom end of Weymouth Road as I came down. 50 paces. The other side, loads more at the end of the road with Somerset Road, and there's sections of double yellows and other places up the road. There's lots more double yellow lines. There are 3 disabled parking spaces that won't be removed that are never used. I know the one lady who uses them regularly by name because I've gone over and had a chat and a laugh with her about how much space she's got to park her Micra.
Can I ask you to wrap up now and pass the mic?
I'd also say that the scheme as it's run so far also controls the residents of Weymouth Road. I'll give you one example. I live with 2 neighbours adjacent. Between us, for demographic reasons, those 3 houses own 8 cars. For legacy reasons, they have got 4 car permits. I've got 1, another neighbour's got 1, one person's got 2. The other 4 cars are parked off the road. If you take this scheme away, where do you think those cars will be parked for convenience the day after the scheme is scrapped? Before that scheme was introduced, they were on the road, they'll be back on the road. And finally, I'd like to bring about one serious concern, and that is the concern that all along the line, councillors, historically and currently, I think have been manipulated by councillors who have personal interests in this scheme being scrapped, a councillor who was a resident of Somerset Road, who was on the committee that discussed these issues back in 2022, I think, and didn't declare an interest at the time. You can go back and look at the minutes. He commissioned the town clerk to write to, I can name him if you want. He commissioned the town clerk to write to Somerset Council's chief executive, and that's been done twice. And the town clerk, I would like to say, the town clerk lives in Nunney Road, and he also at no point in that situation has declared an interest. Now, I understand he doesn't have the same responsibility legally to declare an interest, but perhaps a resident of Nunney Road shouldn't be writing on the behalf of the council expressing concerns about this scheme to the chief executive of Somerset County Council. That would seem to be a very partisan action.
Need to end that time, and unfortunately, I can only offer the lady behind you 1 minute to say her piece now.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Chedsoy. I'm a resident of Weymouth Road. I support everything that's been said by the other residents tonight. But I'd just like to add that I would like to see a compromise solution being put forward and not the removal of the scheme for all the reasons that have already been stated. For example, in the Bath area, I could frequently visit there for work, and I can park in residential permit areas for up to 2 hours, and that is allowed on a lot of their schemes, and I don't see why we couldn't have the same sort of compromise solution on Weymouth Road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you all. I think we've heard the voices in favour of retaining the parking. Who have we got who wants to speak? Oh, yes, sorry. We've got one contribution that came in by email from a couple who unfortunately are unable to join us tonight. So I'll just ask Paul to read that through.
So this is from a couple on Somerset Road. The outcome of the Weymouth Road scheme has been to increase the amount of on-street parking on Somerset Road, including parking on single and yellow lines. This is now more difficult to drive up and down Somerset Road. The parking scheme on Weymouth Road can only continue if there is a whole town review of parking and a proper plan implemented to provide resident parking and restriction and/or charging for other motorists. That current parking restrictions and any new restrictions that may be introduced are effectively policed. Current observations are that many motorists regularly park on double and single yellow lines without receiving any penalty notice. Park Road Safe School scheme is regularly ignored as well.
Thank you. I think we've got somebody online who wanted to speak first. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yeah, first we've got Bob Ashford and also Paul Rice is holding his hand up.
Okay, if we can take Bob first, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Bob. Thank you.
Great, no, thanks. Well, can I just start by saying, declaring interest, I guess. I mean, I've been a resident of, like Kevin, in Weymouth Road. I've been a resident in Somerset Road now for 26 years. And whenever we moved there, we accepted that living opposite a park, there were always going to be issues with parking. It was part of the business of actually living by a park, and also a very, very strong benefit. I mean, this has now been going, I think, for probably 7 years, this debate, since those initial meetings. And I have to disagree with the speaker who said that in the initial consultation, that the residents of Weymouth Road were all in favour of a parking permit scheme. They weren't. There was actually a minority. It was only in subsequent consultations that majority was actually met there. But I've been against permit parking both in Weymouth Road and in Somerset Road, and I voted against it really for the following reasons. Firstly, it's already divided our communities, and we can see that tonight, in the room tonight and throughout these sort of debates we've had in the past. People have been angry by it and frustrated by it, and I can't accept that there's only a very tiny minority. If you look at the Frome Facebook page and other social media, you see whenever there's an event on in the park, there's a lot of angry people there. And I guess I also come at this from a question of fairness. I think it's grossly unfair. Whilst the needs of one street have probably been met in terms of the residents there, everybody else in the surrounding streets, traders, and indeed right across town, anyone that uses a park, and it's not just local residents, it's people sort of across on the other side of town that have children, those who are less able to actually walk there, they have all been disadvantaged by this scheme. And what's happened now, quite obviously, and we said this right at the beginning, actually, is that the problem in Weymouth Road, it's probably been solved for them, but it's just been displaced elsewhere, really. And what we see now, at times when the schools are coming out, when there's an event on in the park, there's carnage in the local areas because there's nowhere to park. Cars are driving around trying to find somewhere. And it's actually made, road safety far worse in those adjoining streets as well. And traffic chaos is now, rife every time I say there is an event on in the park or during school times. And the most galling part about that is that if you drive down Weymouth Road at this time, there are swathes of empty parking spaces there. There's a permit parking scheme, which clearly doesn't work because there are far more empty spaces than there are people actually parking there. And that really does annoy people. Yep.
Yeah, Bob, I do think I need to draw you to a close now because we've got other voices.
Can I just say as well, to thank the council for bringing this up and actually coming, and I hope we can see the end of this sorry affair. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Sarah, did you say there was somebody else? So, Paul, can you let us have your view, please? Paul Rice.
He is unmuted. Hello, Paul.
Okay, we'll come back to Paul. Who else have I got in the room that wants to speak? Gentleman at the front.
Hiya, my name is Simon Moore. I live on Somerset Road, 25 years. I would say that it definitely has got more dangerous since this came into place. I used to run my business from home with a couple of vehicles, and there wasn't any issue with the parking, but now I've since moved them away because I can't even park my personal vehicle anywhere near the house at any point during the day. It's almost just as difficult towards the end of the day and in the evening as well, basically. I do know of one car accident that happened a little bit up from mine, where the girl was putting her child in the car and got knocked over, injured. So, okay, that's it.
Have we got Paul online?
Paul, can you hear us? He's unmuted, but
No.
we can't hear him.
I'm sorry about that. Any other voices to be heard? One or two over at the back there.
My name is Charles Kemp. I live Somerset Road. So just a simple point, the consultation as it happened early on, my experience was it was deeply flawed and it never felt like it got to the heart of the problem. That's all. So I have no trust in that early process. And just one thing, they canvassed Somerset Road in the questionnaire. Somerset Road has totally different interests depending on where you live. A third of it is a yellow line. A third of it has parking at the back, we don't. And then the top part of Somerset Road is totally different. So people probably didn't respond because it didn't affect them. If you have a yellow line, why do you respond? And the question I remember was, do you perceive there to be a problem? It wasn't kind of made clear what the problem we were being talked about. So I just want to put that back in.
Okay, thank you. Tristan.
My name's Tristan Powell and I'm a Frome resident for 17 years. And I'm a member of the Frome Neighbourhood Parking Group who have been, I suppose, what Mark would say, spearheading some concerted efforts to resist or change the current scheme. I'd just like to say that for the 10 or 12 or 13, 14 years that I did park in Weymouth Road when I could, very often I would come home very late at night from work, because I'm an audio engineer, often in London, and I would always find a space around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And contrary to Mr. O'Shea's comments that it will be a long-term car park, there are plenty of people, that's fine. Okay, I'm just answering questions.
That's not reasonable. That lets the people who go second revert what's been said by the people who go first.
If I may just finish uninterrupted, I'd be grateful. I don't think Weymouth Road will become a long-term car park. There are people that use the street and commute. There are shop owners, people that work in the shops in Badcocks. They've used it to park for, a few hours. I don't see how 2 hours will help assist people if they're working in Frome or they're going out on commutes. The only other point I want to raise is that the issue of permits was also offered to a much greater part of the town, the Trinity area, which had at least 300 households. And the feedback came back from that consultation as a resounding no, it doesn't solve any problems. And I just want to remind everybody about that permits are not necessarily the right fix, the right plaster for the wound. And I don't think the permits have helped with the Weymouth Road situation. There are other ways you can calm traffic, as we've all notably seen with the Safer Schemes route. And that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Okay, I've just got 2 minutes left in this slot. Gentleman over at the back there.
Thanks so much. My name is Chris Wildridge. I don't live on Weymouth Road. I live behind Weymouth Road on Birkbristol Lane. And I did respond to the consultation that was made. I pointed out to the Highways Department all the problems that we're seeing now with increased problems in Weymouth Road itself in terms of empty spaces and no parking there. That being transmitted to other roads, the upper part of Weymouth Road is now heavily parking. Somerset Road, at the top of Birkbristol Lane, is also, the scheme has had malign influences upon those around the area, including in Trinity. I'm in a fortunate position of having off-road parking, so I don't have any irons in the fire. But I was a consultee. I did make my points known, and I think it's not been for the benefit of the area around other than Weymouth Road.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now come round to my colleagues on the council. If any councillors have comments or questions. Mel.
Okay, I'm Mel Assuring, I'm a councillor. This is not a local problem. I've got two daughters who both live in northwest London, and they're going through this kind of process. So we need to recognise that it's an issue. taking one street out of a scheme and then giving them some preference is not going to work in any shape or form. You need a larger area than that. It occurs to me that now and again you come across problems which have got no right answer. There is no right or wrong answer to this, and everybody who's spoken has got positive points to make, and all of them have got validity. But that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't take harsh decisions. And I, for one, would prefer to be part of a council that says, okay, we didn't get everything right. We might not have made the right decision in the first place, but we would like to put it right now, rather than just hiding it, which is what normally happens under these circumstances. It gets pushed away, it goes on for years, there is no answer. So I would prefer it if there was an answer this evening, and I will be voting for removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Holly?
Hi, I'm Polly Lamb. I'm a councillor for Park Ward, so that includes this area. We obviously had a whole meeting at the point of changing over a public meeting, and that, you know, we listened to lots of opinions on both sides then. And a lot of these points were raised, but it's really interesting to hear what's happened since. And there are a couple of things that I think make it more complicated than just to say to remove it, aside from the fact that it's not clear cut in the room at all. And for, you know, very much agree with some of the residents who've come up with the idea of, you know, this wasn't the right solution, there could be a compromise. We, from the beginning, went back to Steve Deacon and asked him for a Frome-wide, once again, not for the first time, a Frome-wide parking review. We said that it can't be done in isolation, and that hasn't occurred from Somerset. So this is something that's sitting in an island, and, you know, as Bob Ashford just said, it is dividing a community. Not because of, you know, their own fault, but because it has, you know, potentially hasn't been done with the right kind of consultation. And I don't think that this is necessarily right now to just either keep it or remove it. For one, since then, something has been done by the school street scheme to make it safer, which is the 20-mile-an-hour limit. That's a permanent thing. The school streets scheme is an 18-month trial, but everywhere around the area that has been made into a 20-mile-an-hour zone, that's permanent. Now, I think that it is taking everyone, all of those residents who knew it to be 30, a while to get used to it, I think. But I do see traffic slowing down in that area. I live in the area, and I do see traffic going slower. So I think that's a change that we're not necessarily taking into consideration here this evening, and yet, you know, the whole scheme came about as a request for improved safety. So that's changed. Also, what you represent here was saying was about the fact that there are now more double yellow lines. That's a change. So it isn't just a question of going back to it how it was before. There are other elements that are now coming into this, not least the fact that businesses have new experiences of this. One of the reasons why, you know, one of the things that we did when we all got together and heard from residents before was to really listen to feedback, and we want to really listen to feedback again. And there's no clear-cut answer here this evening, as far as I can hear. So I don't think it's a question of making a tough decision as to yes or no. I think what I'm hearing is it's more complex than that, and that I wouldn't move to make either decision this evening. I think it needs more looking into.
Thank you, Polly. I've got Fiona and then Nick.
Can I pick up on a couple of the ideas that I've heard this evening? And I'm going to ask you whether they're sort of like possible. I have a sense of what the answer might be, but I think it's just quite good to sort of talk them through. So the idea around sort of giving permits to residents of the other roads and of people who live in the town, would that be possible?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I can actually answer it. As it stands at the moment, it's Somerset Council that administers the permit scheme. I would say that that would be very heavy to do, you know, in an admin sense. How would we check who is entitled to what permits? Not saying it's impossible, but I'm not sure that it is possible.
Somerset Council's financial position, etc. I think, yeah. And then the idea of sort of changing the restrictions so that people could maybe park for sort of a couple of hours at a time.
Again, I think I'd need to take the advice from the Somerset parking team on that one. But again, I think that would be people would have to go and check that people had been parked for a certain amount of time. How enforceable it is another question.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is that I do hear what you were saying, Polly. Also, I'm Fiona Bowers. I'm a Froomtown councillor for Oakfield Ward. But also, I sort of feel this, since we've become councillors, has sort of been an issue that's sort of been on running. And I really heard what Bob Ashford said about how it's dividing communities. And it does feel like it has been going on for such a long time. And I just feel sort of the longer it goes on for, the more division it's going to cause. And I do agree with him about it being unfair, like ultimately, and I know that that's not going to be popular among many of you, but it does, and it feels like it's a rock and a hard place situation, to be honest, tonight. Like, I don't think either of we're going to upset people whichever way we go, and I don't think it's perfect. I think obviously the best solution would be a town-wide parking scheme and a proper look at it, and we've been advocating for that for years now, as far as I'm aware, and we haven't got anywhere with it. And it was actually me at the last meeting that just said, can we stop talking about that and just focus on this now, because it is just sort of going on, and I just think we need to come to a resolution, because I just don't like what it's doing to everyone in all the communities.
Thanks, Fiona. Nick?
Nick Dove, Froomtown councillor. Keithwood Ward is my ward, which is over the other side of town, but I was previously Market Ward, the centre of town, and I also have a lead role with the town centre. It's complicated. The reality is we live in a sort of town that's got way too few spaces for the cars that are here. I would yet again say it should be a town-wide examination of the problem and see what the solutions are, but I would go along with the idea of fairness. I speak to business owners in the town most days. For them and their staff, the Weymouth Road permit scheme has had a real impact. It's made their lives more difficult. Residents who live in surrounding streets have been disadvantaged by the scheme, and I would agree that it's fundamentally unfair, and I would vote in support of the recommendation, which is to get rid of the permit scheme.
Okay. Thank you. Unless, I'm sorry, we have heard the voice of the public on this, so I'm not going to come back to anybody with a view either way.
That's the issue of division, isn't it? That this was not a Weymouth Road scheme. This was consulted in 9 streets south.
Yeah. Can I just come back, as it was my point you were responding to? I mean, I like Sam's suggestion around permits, and I have direct experience of this elsewhere in the country. You will never have enough permits for you will issue too many permits and people won't be able to use them. The demand will be huge and it'll be impossible to administer in our current situation.
So I think, thank you all.
The issue is not residents, the issue is visitors.
Sorry, you've had your chance to speak. I'm sorry, sir.
This man came back after he's finished.
Councillor, you're not. You're just a Weymouth Road resident who wants what he wants.
Sorry, can I have some quiet in the room, please? Lisa, did you want to speak as a councillor?
Thank you. Yes, Lisa Merriweather Millard, Froomtown councillor for Keithwood Ward. I'm just wondering about Somerset's role in all of this. It feels like they've put us in a position to solve a problem that we possibly can't. We've heard a couple of calls for more consultation, or not necessarily more consultation, but finding a solution that works better. Do we have any opportunity to go back to Somerset and say, actually, can you action some things on this?
I think, to be fair, we asked Somerset to look at this, and being local, they felt we were best placed to assess the issues. You know, I've heard lots of discussion about compromise or, you know, different schemes. I think, and the parking review, and undoubtedly, we don't only need a parking review in the town. We need to look at the transport, a strategy for the whole thing.
Thank you. I'm just going to take an input from Councillor Martin Dimmery, and then I'm going to ask one.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm the Somerset councillor. This debate began in 2018. It was pointed out. I became this particular ward councillor in 2022, and I must say, in that brief time, it's been the most contentious, the most difficult, and most time-consuming issue I've had to deal with, amongst many, I can assure you. And there is no easy answer. But what I would like to say is what's happening tonight is completely unprecedented, because the council has never given the opportunity to a town council to make a decision democratically about parking. It usually happens that the parking officer based in Taunton will make this decision with the consultation perhaps of the ward councillors and other councillors in the town. And this has actually happened because of the pressure that's been put on the town council to take it. You can't now give it back to Somerset. They've given you that opportunity. It's a poison chalice, I know that from dealing with it. One or two things were said earlier on. Yes, I mean, there was a very big, very wide survey that took place of the adjoining streets. The question regarding Somerset Road did, by a small minority, want parking permits as well, but it was actually, the actual response was not big enough to be able to implement it. And I've always been of the opinion that the survey that was originally done, as flawed as it may have been, was honest and was fair. And I do take issue with some people re-quoting statistics on that. I don't think I can add much to this argument. It isn't an easy one. But what I would say, in the spirit of compromise, when this issue was reviewed, as it had to be, and I had to chase very heavily for that to be reviewed, I couldn't come to a complete conclusion. I think it is unfair in many ways. I also think it's very unfair on the Weymouth Road residents who have petitioned for it and took the trouble to respond to the initial inquiry. There could be compromises. I have gone at Weymouth Road, and as I said earlier on, there are yellow lines there that weren't there before. And if everybody had one parking permit, I think you could release at least 15 public parking spaces. But as somebody said to me when I said that, is that all? It's never going to satisfy everybody.
Okay, thank you, Martin. So I think we've had a lively debate about that. Can one of the councillors propose that we vote on the motion? So I'll take Nick proposing, and so is that a proposal that we accept the recommendation in the report? Is there somebody to second that? I've got Fiona seconding it. So can we now vote as councillors on whether we accept the recommendation in this report? And can I take, should it be?
Any abstentions?
Are there any abstentions?
Any against?
Anybody voting against the recommendation of the report? That's carried by a majority. Thank you all. So that concludes item 3. I'm now suggesting we take a short break, because I imagine many of the guests this evening will want to head for their homes. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you, if you're not staying for subsequent items, please to clear the room. Councillors, can I ask you to sit down so we can continue the meeting, please?
Maybe group closer together just so it's easier
Yeah.
to see online.
Polly, can I ask you to come and take a seat nearer the middle so we can concentrate our chat? Can I ask remaining councillors to move to the centre of the room so that we can all see each other and talk easily, please? Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, bit of hush, please. We're going to carry on with item 4 on the agenda, which is to explore extending the Frome parish boundary. And I'll ask Paul to talk us through the topic.
I purposely haven't put any slides together on this because I'm sure you've all read it. Suffice to say, the main reason for bringing this forward, and it's no news to any of you. It's been rumbling on for a little while. This question about the sort of parish boundary is basically Frome has grown to its limits. We're now spewing over the side with new developments already, and if Sower Garden Community and other proposed developments that are in the pipeline happen, a lot of those developments will be in neighbouring parishes. So that's the kind of the facts, if you like. The proposal is to ask Somerset Council, and it's their responsibility, not the Boundary Commission, it's Somerset Council's responsibility, to explore whether to extend the parish boundary and therefore reduce the parish size of neighbouring parishes. You know, there's only so much land, and you can just move the boundary. The report talked about the kind of the criteria, and as far as I can see, the advice I've had from people at Somerset Council and my reading of the legislation and regulations is that we can ask Somerset Council to review that. There's sort of demographic changes are cited, ensure effective local governance, reasons like that. The timing of it is an interesting one. It seems as though, looking back, there was a change historically in the boundary to basically, I think, Chris, you might know more than this than I did because we were talking about it the other day. But it happened when Stonebridge, I think, was extended, and the parish boundary was sort of extended to do that. There is the beginnings of a review going on that Somerset Council is project managing with the Boundary Commission about the Somerset Councillors' wards or divisions, and there are other bids, if you like, going in at the same time as us, if you agree, from other towns in Somerset to explore that. So we were thinking that timing-wise, we kind of future-proof the boundary. Somerset Council is looking at boundaries at the moment, so it sort of seems a good opportunity to do so. I kind of sensationally perhaps sort of talked about sort of it's once in a generation opportunity to move the boundary, and it seems looking back, that's not an overstatement. It seems other things being equal, it happens about once every 25 years to sort of accommodate expansions of towns. Neighbouring towns like Trowbridge have done this in the last 15 years. I went into a little bit more detail about the reasons why this is needed, but I think the most important one is that as the town expands, if it expands beyond the parish boundary, Frome council tax payers will be paying for the services of the people who are paying less council tax in Selwood or Berkeley or whatever the parish may be. They won't know the difference, and who knows where the parish boundary, apart from us lucky people in the room. They'll live in Frome and expect services provided by this council, and it just seems fair to our community that we are able to charge them and provide them with services as opposed to disadvantages Frome community from that. So that's all I have really for you. There's absolutely no guarantee that Somerset Council go, yes, Frome Town Council has been waiting for this. They'll listen. I can have meetings with them. We can have meetings with them to sort of explore whether it's possible, whether they're minded to do it. It's a process that will take a year or two at best, but future-proofing and getting ready for what is likely to be, almost certainly be, a quite significant expansion to the town is something that I advise we need to get on with.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I know Fiona wants to speak, Lenka wants to speak. I'm guessing, Chris, you might want to come back. Okay, so let me take Fiona first.
Just a couple of questions, Paul. So first of all, what is it that we're just asking for a review, or do we sort of make a suggestion as to where we think the boundary should be? Is it just sort of, is it just review?
I don't know.
Okay.
Never done one before.
Okay.
I expect them to say, yes, we're willing to look at it, or no, we're not willing to look at it. And that will lead to sort of various actions. Sort of, if it's yes, I would expect us to have a view on where we want the parish boundary to be. If it's a no, then it's still arguing about the principle of it.
Okay, and then in terms of democracy, because if we get more people in our town, we then have more councillors, I'm presuming. Is that how it works? And is there an upper limit then? Because I think at 17 we're quite big for town council in terms of the number. Someone was really shocked when I told them that the other day. I'm just wondering whether, does that then change like the democracy of Frome Town Council?
Yeah, it's a really good thing. The community governance review will look at wards within the new boundary. Okay. And Somerset Council will look at that and decide, presumably with discussion with us, but I can't guarantee that, about different boundaries, whether boundaries need to be moved. As far as I know, there's no exact population per ward.
And is there any upper limit on what?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Lenka. Can we find Lenka a microphone?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say I think that's a really good idea because we at Fair Frome, we've been looking at this and we're supporting a lot of people outside the Frome parish area, and obviously population increasing. And it's something I did bring up at the LCN meeting, AGM meeting, because obviously there's representatives from the other parishes there that actually, because we are supporting people in the villages, and like you say, if you know, there's different levels of council tax and it's impacting on the services in the town, but also all the charities in the town. So that is, yeah. So
okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Did you say there's somebody online waiting to speak? Sorry? Oh, well, let's take Helen first and then I'll come back to some other people in the room. Helen, can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that I attended the Constitution and Governance meeting back in September where we had an update on the review for the new Somerset Council wards, and there was a question about a light touch review of all parish wards going on at the same time in parallel to make sure that all the boundaries were coterminous, as they called it. Because there's only basically 2 people, if that, at Somerset Council doing all this work, they said it's going to be a very light touch review for the parish boundaries. I do need to check that. I did put it in an email, which I think I copied Jane Llewellyn and Steve Tanner into, and I haven't checked it yet. So I do need to go back and check that. So don't minute it exactly as I've said it. I'll try and get back to you within a few days. But I think they are probably expecting something from you. We did talk about Frome East, which is currently the largest Somerset Council ward by population because of all these new housing developments. And that may be divided up into 3 Somerset Council wards. I know that's what you're not talking about that today, but because that was recognised, they also recognised that Frome Town Council would probably want to push its boundary out to take into account those that are currently in Selwood Parish. Just on that issue, by the way, you said it hadn't changed since 1974. I was at a meeting with Selwood Parish Council, and somebody there had got some old documents, and he thought that Edmund Park, where it is now, that used to be in Selwood as well, and that actually the boundary has moved. But I didn't get a date from him as to when that was. I think it might have been pre-1974. Okay, thanks. I can try and get back to you by the end of the week. I'll rerun that bit of the meeting and ask the relevant officer what he said. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I think Carla, and then Nick, and then Mel I've got.
Council thinks about this. Have you spoken to them at all?
Yeah, we'll take some input from Chris shortly. Nick, do you want to pick up?
I didn't realise the man behind me was there, because I was going to ask, because I say in Paul's report, I think the suggestion was that they weren't enthusiastic about this proposal, so I can hear from the man himself, I'm guessing.
Okay. Well, let's take that now, if you don't mind, Mel, and then we'll come back to you.
It's working. Yeah, okay. I'm a relative newbie in Frome. I moved here in 1988. So, I'm getting used to it. I suppose. But historically, the whole of the Stonebridge estate was part of Selwood Parish Council. There is nobody around nowadays who could actually confirm how on earth that ever happened, but it has, and it's there. Similarly with Edmund Park, we have a chairman. I'm Chris Bennett, by the way, vice chairman of Selwood Parish. Jim has been here all of his life, and he can never recall whether or not there was any formal arrangement for Edmund Park to be removed from Selwood into Frome Town Council. So you know how, all of you know how long Edmund Park has been here, and it isn't that long in relative terms. So we were very concerned when this whole suggestion was mooted that, okay, we don't want to stand in the way of progress, but equally we don't want to be left out of the process. Okay, and I think we feel at this particular time that timing is of the essence, because we represent the people in our parish, and what you're actually suggesting is that they then find that their precept or their council tax will rise quite considerably to match those living in the town, whereas historically they have had a relatively, and I have to admit this, a relatively low amount of council tax to pay. And in answer to the Fair Frome people, I mean, a lot of the people from outside the community contribute to Fair Frome in the same way that everybody within Frome does, because we come into the town on a regular basis to buy things, to see things, and to do things. So, and there's lots of contributions come from people within the parishes around. We also have to say that this is being preempted somewhat by the development of Selwood Community Gardens village, and that is going to be, in our opinion, a long way ahead in terms of spades in the ground and people moving in and beginning to pay council tax. The issue we do have, and we're currently aware of it, is the fact that the Curo development is now coming on stream, and we will benefit in financial terms from an increased amount of precept that we're allowed. We also have to debate whether or not we can, as a small, very old-fashioned parish council, whether or not we can actually cope with the services that this particular development will require of us. So we have a meeting next week, and I know Jim Dowling, our chairman, has actually suggested to you via Paul that any decision made by the councillors this evening is deferred until such time as we have actually had a formal vote on the matter within our parish, so that, you know, the views of Selwood Parish Council can be taken into account. Okay, so I'm not wishing to have influenced the vote of any of you here this evening, but just putting our point of view. All right, thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chris. I've got Mel and then Lisa and then Steve.
Okay. I think this is quite an important point, and I recognise many of the things that Chris has said. But having attended recently some parish council meetings locally, as well as doing quite a lot of work for the National Association of Local Councils, I know that most parishes really struggle to kind of catch up in terms of where they should be and where they're going to have to be in the future, because the abolition of the district councils is going to place much more emphasis on local decisions, local expertise, local funding, and decisions are going to have to be made quickly. So the future of parish councils is not going to be the same as the past. And so whether or not we hijacked Edmund Park is probably irrelevant now, but it's possibly true, actually, judging by the way things used to work. So I think that's really important. And what was right in 1974, which is 50 years ago, cannot be right now. And so we need to admit that. And I mean, all the rumours that we hear is that Selwood Garden Community will be agreed eventually in one form or another. And I would suggest that the national government, the way that they're pushing for new housing, would actually improve the chances of that happening. And if I was on Selwood Parish Council, I don't think I'd want the responsibility of all that decision making, which has got to go on from now till then. And we've got quite a lot of history and expertise here, so working together would be really beneficial, it seems to me. And of course, modern developments, whether they're housing or commercial or both, actually bring with them not just the houses themselves, but all sorts of other responsibilities, facilities, green open spaces, advocating for the people who live there, and so on and so forth. So it's this extension is going to be really large, and it's interesting that it doesn't actually say in this report it's around Selwood Garden Community, which is probably quite smart actually, because we may want to go elsewhere as well. But anyway, I just think I would prefer to make the decision tonight, I think, and get it started, because who knows how quickly or slowly things are going to move. We could actually get to an outline stage fairly quickly, to be honest. Thanks,
Mel. Lisa and then Steve, and then we'll take it to a vote.
I'm looking to clarify a couple of things. The decision that we're making tonight is not a decision about whether we extend. It's to engage in the process of speaking to Somerset. Is that right? About this?
Yes.
Yeah, great. And the second bit, and forgive me that I don't know this, are there levels of council tax that we can charge based on kind of area, or is it everybody pays the same? Do we know that?
I think, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think the council tax rate is based on every member or every household in the community. Yeah, and obviously there are different rates, A, B, through to depending on the council tax.
Okay, thanks. Steve, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I just, although obviously the Selwood Garden Community is front and centre of everyone's thought on this one, I think when Jane and I looked at the parish boundary not that long ago, any development that happens will basically be outside of our parish. It's full at the moment. So it's not, we know there's one up at the north by Oldfield that's being muted as well. We fought off Marston Lane. 18 months ago, whenever it was. So it's not just about what happens down at the Selwood Garden community proposed site. This is sort of future for the whole of the surrounding of the town, really. And I think that's why it's quite important.
Okay, thank you. Can I have somebody propose that we support the recommendation? I've got Fiona proposing, Polly seconding. All those in favour? Appears to be unanimous.
Yep.
Thank you all. And moving on swiftly, as it's already 8:25, to approve increasing the responsibilities of the Oversight Committee on Staff Matters. We've had a paper circulated on this. Is there any discussion required? Mel? Can you just get a microphone from somewhere?
I'd like to extend its remit a little bit more, and I don't expect anybody to agree with me, so that's okay. I would like at least a small group of this committee actually approves the filling of any post, whether or not it's in the organisation chart or otherwise. I think we're coming to a time when we may want to say we don't necessarily want to fill all existing posts, and sometimes they just get filled without us seeing as councillors. So I would like to put an extra step in that process that says the chair or the vice chair or both and one other councillor actually approves with the town clerk a vacant post gets filled. I'm not quite sure how you'd word that, but it just kind of gets us a little bit more used to the fact that things are going to be perhaps slightly tougher in the future.
What do we do about that?
I agree with that, but I think it should be rather than a chair or something, it should be the Oversight Committee.
Please, Fiona. I need Paul to give us guidance on how we handle the voting on this, because effectively I think Mel is proposing an amendment to the recommendation.
So you would need to propose some change of wording, and it would then be seconded and then voted on, and then we go back to the as amended recommendations. Alternatively, can I suggest we explore that in two stages? You could agree or not this recommendation tonight, and then maybe with this kind of chair and oversight and whomever, we could just look at the wording to propose coming back to this, just to sort of the next stage, if you like. I think unless you can explicitly give some wording now, I'd quite like to wordsmith it a bit just to make it tight.
Kicking the can down the road, which is a kind of classic move. Not by yourself, but anybody in that position is exactly what I would do.
Bring it back to next month's meeting.
Yeah, that never seems to work for me, that one. I can wordsmith it if you wish, but there again, you're the town clerk, so maybe you could. So basically what I'm saying is we extend the remit, so if any vacancy occurs, that a small group of this committee actually approves it with the benefit of your advice.
I can write that if you want. Define small group. Can maybe make a suggestion. Can make a suggestion on that, because there is within the remit of the Oversight Committee a clause. Laura, can you remember what it? Can you bring it out maybe? That's somewhere along the lines of, for areas outside the responsibility of the town clerk, the leader, the chair of oversight, and one other councillor are kind of consulted and make recommendations to oversight. So we've got that wording in there already. I mean, does it help?
I've got Mark wanting to speak as well.
Just as chair. It's a mic drop moment.
No need to.
Surprised I'm talking. As chair of oversight, I've got a lot of sympathy for your proposal, Mel. Would it be best that our next meeting is the 23rd of October? I know that's it's my birthday. Could we not have this an agenda item thrash it out in that meeting, get it just right, and do that for the sake of not, quick laws, bad law, something like that. Should we do that? Should we get this an agenda item with a proposal? Mel, you can come up with a form of words in the meantime and submit it, and then we'll discuss it and vote on it at that meeting. Is it?
So I think what I'm hearing is a proposal that we move to a vote on the existing recommendation with some subsequent actions. Is that fair?
Okay, hold on. Can I propose an addition to motion? I'm going to propose on Mel's behalf. So in section 16, terms of reference of the Oversight Committee, all aspects related to human resources, including both paid staff and volunteers, beyond the remit of the Council and Town Clerk, including changes to the organisation chart, so long as these are within the overall staff budget, and the rehiring of and the filling of any roles that become vacant. And the refilling of any. What's the phrasing there? Refilling of any words that become vacant. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, let me just put Fiona off for a second. So it's kind of, if possible, not usual. I don't want to put a step in that necessarily means 3 months to the next meeting, and so that vacancy is going to occur. So I just want somewhere of getting some representatives from that committee to actually make a decision with the town clerk, so that we know that there's an extra step being put in the process. So if we can write that up for the next meeting, then I would be more than.
So one way forward then is to either defer this decision until the whole set of revisions are done for the next meeting, or agree this and then the final tweak at the next council meeting, which is in a month. What would you prefer to vote on?
I'll take your advice.
My suggestion is to take Mark's advice, and quick laws are kind of, we've worked quite hard on these wordings, and I'd really like to just make sure it's tight. I've got nothing against your proposal at all. I think it's perfectly reasonable. And
okay.
So can I come back with
propose that we actually defer a vote on this to the next council meeting
for the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. You're proposing?
I'm proposing. I think I saw Sarah second. Is that up, Polly? Yeah.
It is.
Paul said, agree this now and then come up with further tweaking for the next council meeting. And Andy's just said defer the whole thing for the next council meeting. So I just want to know which in the room.
I'm asking for a vote on whether we defer this. I'm proposing it. Sarah's seconding it. And I think that's not unanimous. There's 2 people at the back who haven't waved.
So that's majority with Steve voting, abstaining, and Carla. 2 abstentions, Carla and Steve. So I'll come back to the next meeting with a revised proposal. Hopefully it will be accepted.
It doesn't really matter which way round we do it, as long as it comes back with a revision, and then it's all recorded now anyway, so yeah.
Okay.
So that's majority.
Okay, thank you. And moving on then to item 6, which is an update on Badgers Hill. Who's got this one? Is this with you?
I think it's that end of the table.
It's me again. I'm kind of hoping that you've all read the update and I don't need to say any more unless, of course, anybody has any questions.
Doesn't look like, thanks, Chris. Doesn't look like anybody's got any questions for you, Jane.
Great.
Okay.
Noted.
Noted, thank you. And the next meeting, at which we will discuss an item about the scope of the Oversight Committee, is at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 13th of November. And I'll see you all then. Thank you all very much.
Could we ask for a little help stacking the chairs? If everyone stacked 3 chairs, we'd be done. Thank you.
Part on there. Do you mind if we vote you? Sorry,